Welcome to another Warhammer 40k stream. This time we're reacting to another fan film. This one, The Last Church. I am familiar with the story that it is based on, but let's watch this one to see how well it adapts it. Let's bring in Mr. Codex.
With these words, I, Rabuti Gilliman, Lord Commander of the Imperium, son of the Emperor of Mankind, declare the Indomitus Crusade. Traitors, mutants, demons, pay heed to the coming of my armies and the ruin we promise your miserable kind. This galaxy is ours.
Hello.
Alrighty, so and then we'll bring in Mr. Ninjato. Here we go.
Hello.
Yeah. The third worst Lord of the Rings production in the history of mankind.
Oh, at least it's more memorable and more faithful. At least
Well, it's just, we got Rings of Power is, well,
I would say it's second worst because it's like it doesn't like you have to compare with something that tries to be respectful yet fails completely, that accidentally insult the original work, to something that was made that was so insulting that it was never made.
Yeah, I would concur, since the worst one is clearly John Borman's Lord of the Rings script, and then you have Rings of Power, and then you have the Rankin Bass Return of the King.
I would still argue that it is at least way more entertaining and way more memorable.
Oh, definitely. I just, in terms of overall quality.
Yeah, it's more of like an issue is that you gotta sum up a trilogy that you didn't do the first two parts of. So you can't really have that cohesion. So you're really just making a sequel to The Hobbit, and you're making a sequel to your Hobbit film by doing the ending of the big trilogy. So how you're gonna do it?
By removing most of the characters and character arcs.
Yeah, and making it into a musical is the only other way to make sense with like a long format into a condensing.
And it's so weird, and like a lot of the voice acting is bad, and the frickin' Witch King is frickin' stupid. I hate that version of the Witch King. It's so awful.
Like what, the voice or the voice or
the look is fine. It's a tad goofy looking, but the Skeletor voice sucks.
Well, you know what's funny? You know what voice?
I am Skeletor.
It's not Skeletor, though. It could be, actually.
I know.
The voice actor goes on to play Starscream.
I know it just sounds like Skeletor.
The original.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just looking at him, just like, yeah, he sounds like Skeletor. I know it's Starscream, but it's still one of the most awful voices I've ever heard. I actually watched John Hurt's voice overlaid over the Witch King, and it sounds cool. It's infinitely better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also. Yeah, it could. Oh, sorry.
They used the Horned Kings dialogue from The Black Cauldron, which is another movie I really hate, but got a good villain in it. Sorry, go for it, Ninja.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the unfortunate effects of the 80s is that if you're looking for really threatening villain voices, the 80s is not that great.
Yeah. I think
but because it's a lot more about fun than actually being serious.
Yeah, like Frank Welker in Transformers Prime is pretty much the definitive Megatron in my eyes, and he has that voice is great.
I like the War for Cybertron trilogy version of Megatron. I like that.
Yeah, I am Megatron. You better surrender. Bow before me.
Done. When you get to Dawn of War, Chaos Rising, you might two of the characters may sound familiar, and if you know anything from Transformers specifically, well, I'll leave it there. But you know,
I think like another great one is David K. He was the one who did Beast Wars, which that Megatron is a different character, totally different character. But he also did the Armada version of Megatron.
Yeah.
And Armada through Cybertron.
Okay. Well, we'll probably talk about that another time.
Yes.
But we should get to the main event. The fan film based on the short story Warhammer 40k: The Last Church, which essentially is a story about the final church that was destroyed by the Emperor of Mankind.
Yes.
I'm assuming that this isn't like, is this it's like Catholic inspired, but not about Catholicism?
It's more like a fact of how. Actually, you want to go first, then?
No, I'm just talking about the religion that the priest is going to be like under. Like,
it's a made up religion. It's a made up religion. So it's a it's a made up one. Yeah, it has
makes sense.
It's more the question of, is there a god per se, and the belief of God. But again, it's just a made up thing. How do I supposed to put it? It's the question of God. Is there really a yeah?
It's the theist versus atheist argument in many ways.
Pretty much, yeah. Let's put it that way.
All right, let's see how this goes. All right. Graham McNeil wrote the original.
I will say this. I think Graham McNeil, in terms of writing the Emperor, because there's only been relatively two, I think Graham McNeil's take on the Emperor is more balanced compared to Aaron Dinsey Bauman.
Oh yeah, I wonder why. The guy who's famous for writing chaos books does have a good viewpoint of the Emperor.
Well, to be fair, there's nothing wrong with a different take. It's just how he portrays it, really.
Yeah, it's more about.
cold night. I'm an old man. Please. Welcome to the Church of the Fulgur Lapis. Do you wish to join us tonight? I don't recognize you.
No, I don't expect you would. Nor would I expect us to be anyone besides you and I.
Well, this is a surprise. My midnight sermons are considered quite popular in these parts. You're sure?
Quite.
What a shame.
I wonder what
so
happened.
poorly as to scare so many away.
It is rare to find a man like you with a sense of humor. I have found that most of your kind are dour, leaden-hearted men.
My kind?
Priests.
Then I fear you have only met the wrong kind. Besides, given the times we live in, any servants of the divine would find it extremely difficult to be of good cheer.
Very true.
I am Uriah Olothair, last priest of the Church of the Fulgur Lapis. Might I have your name?
My name is unimportant. However, you may call me Apocalypsis.
An unusual name for one who professes a dislike of priests. You are aware of the significance of such a word?
I am. It is suiting for tonight, however.
And why exactly would that be? What revelations do you search for in my humble church?
I seek no revelation. I simply wish to talk to you. I wish to learn what keeps you here when the world is abandoning your beliefs in gods and divinity. I wish to understand why you have yet to turn to the faith of science and reason.
The great fresco of Isandula. A divine work. Wouldn't you agree?
It is quite magnificent, but divine? I don't think so.
Then you have not looked closely enough. Open your heart to its beauty, and you will feel the Spirit of God move within you.
And the whole world came running when the fresco was revealed, and the sight of it was enough to reduce all who saw it to stunned silence.
Ah, so you have read your Vastari.
So I have.
You are a student of art?
I have studied much. Art is indeed one of my interests.
Then you cannot argue that this work was not inspired by a higher power.
Of course I can. I do not seek to diminish the artist's sublime work through allocating praise upon a greater being. Her artistry does not prove the existence of anything. No god has ever created art.
In an earlier age, some might have considered such a sentiment blasphemy.
I have only ever seen mortal men accuse anyone of blasphemy, Uriah. I have only ever seen mortal men act upon it. Were reactions to the accusations any less violent, I would label it a victimless crime.
Touché. But I have yet to see any scientist discover the root of inspiration.
The human mind is a wondrous thing. Do not be so quick to underestimate it. Tell me, Uriah, have you ever seen the great cliff sculptures of the Mariana Canyon?
No, though I have heard they are incredibly beautiful.
They are indeed 1,000-meter-high representations of their kings carved in stone that no weapon or drill can cut. They are at least as incredible as this fresco, worked into a cliff that had not seen sunlight in 10,000 years, yet carved by a godless people in a forgotten age. True art requires no divine rationale. It is just art.
You have your opinion. I have mine.
Isandula was a genius and a magnificent artist.
Since we're gonna do some commentary, so what do you think of the art about this right now argument about art?
I actually say that it's a fairly reasonable representation of atheist versus a theist debate, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I do like the debate on this. Like right now, it's like, and also it's kind of makes sense because like you're doing like with something more when you're trying to do a bit more on this, you're gonna do something a bit more surface, but a lot of people have connection with, like art. And since you are making a Warhammer story, like a Warhammer story that is tied to a toy line, tied to a miniatures product line, and like there is artistry going on.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do like how the flow is going right now. It doesn't seem like neither side is being over zealotry. Yeah, no egregious.
We aren't dealing with a God's Not Dead situation where there is no merit at all in either side.
Yeah, or Noble rants.
That too.
That was.
That too.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
That
I will say
much
this:
is
you
beyond
two had
question,
incredible.
but she still had to make a living, and even magnificent
Yeah,
artists
I was
must
just
take
like
commissions
trying
where they are to be
to
found. I am sure this work paid well, for the
like
churches of
pin
her
him down.
time
Like,
were
what kind
obscenely
of
wealthy.
experience do you
believe
actually
that
have?
she would be
and you
incapable
couldn't
of
have
such
it?
a wondrous feat if she had been employed by a secular government?
She very well may have, but unfortunately we shall never know.
No,
Okay, so
we won't. We are fickle creatures, Uriah. All too often I am tempted to believe that the invocation of the divine is a ploy by the jealous to dismiss one's accomplishments.
Jealousy?
Absolutely. To see another succeed where you may have failed is a sobering thing. Some would rather choose to remain ignorant of their limitations.
That is a very cynical view of humanity.
Forgive me, but I have seen too much darkness to be so innocent as to always assume good intentions. Do not mistake my intentions, however. Only in understanding our weakness may we find strength.
Well, this has been an interesting discussion, but you must excuse me, friend Apocalypsis. I have to prepare for my congregation.
Just a side note, just in the book, it was
No
called
one
Revelation.
is coming. It is
No,
just you
I should say.
and
But
I.
it's just a change.
Why are you really here?
This is the last church on Terra. History will soon be done with places like this, and I want a memory of it before it is gone.
If this is so, then come, friend, let us sit. I would rather not stand for whatever time remains. Oh. Your good health.
And yours. This is very good wine. It's old.
You have a fine appreciation of wine, friend Apocalypsis. My father gave this to me on my 15th birthday and said I should drink it on my wedding night.
And you never married?
Never found anyone willing to put up with me. I was a devilish rogue back then.
No longer, it would seem. A devilish rogue turned priest. Sounds like quite the tale.
It is, but some wounds run deep, and it does no good to reopen them.
Fair enough.
Friend Apocalypsis, tell me, what did you mean when you said this place was soon to be gone?
Exactly what I said. Even in your isolated state, you must have heard of the Emperor and his crusade to stamp out religion and belief in the supernatural. Soon, he and his forces will arrive to tear this place down.
I know, but it makes no difference to me. I believe what I believe, and no amount of hectoring from some warmongering despot will sway me.
That is an obstinate point of view.
It is faith. It would seem I'm not as fickle as you would posit, eh?
Faith. A willing belief in the unbelievable without proof.
Faith's strength is just that.
Easy for a
It
sidekick.
requires no proof. Belief is enough.
That is why the Emperor wants rid of it, then. You call faith powerful. I call it dangerous. Think of what people in the grip of faith have done in the past. All the atrocities down the centuries that can be traced back to faith. Faith is both the causation and the justification for so much evil.
So basically, he's a more eloquent version
You
of
come here
noble.
just to provoke me. I'm no longer a violent man.
Well, that's an
Such a
insult, to
goal
be
would
fair.
be boring and fruitless for the both of us.
But
If
yes,
this is
true.
all you
for
are
the sake
here
of our...
for, I suggest you leave.
You are right, of course. I am being discourteous, and I apologize. I came to learn of this place, not antagonize
Oh, that's something that Noble would
its
never do.
guardian.
Yeah.
Accept your apology, Apocalypsis. Do you wish to see the church?
Most anti-thieves would
I
never
do.
do this. Nah.
Then come with me.
Yes.
Yeah, most anti-theists. It kind of depends on the anti-theist, but
The internet version, yeah, never.
yeah, my experience with a lot
Twitter
of
version?
yeah.
It's more of like if people have it so ingrained in their personality, it becomes like that.
The Fulgur Lapis.
So this is a holy stone?
It is, yes.
Why?
Why is it the Fulgur Lapis?
I mean, why is it holy? Was it deposited on the ground by your god? Was a man martyred here? Or did some young girl receive some sort of revelation while praying at its base?
Nothing so bland, rest assured, friend Apocalypsis. Thousands of years ago, a local holy man who was blind was walking in the hills hereabouts when a sudden storm came in over the Western Ocean. He hurried back down to the village below, but it was a long way, and the storm broke before he could reach safety. The holy man took shelter from the storm in the lee of this stone, at the height of the storm in the lee of the heavens. When he thought all was lost, he was lifted up and heard the voice of our Creator. And so he saw the
And he
stone
called
wreathed
him
in a blue fire, in which
Matanui.
he saw the face of our Creator.
Did you not say he was blind?
Ah, he was blind no longer. The power of our Creator cured him of his affliction. He immediately ran back to the village and told the people there of the miracle.
And then?
The holy man returned to the Fulgur Lapis and instructed the townspeople to build a church around it. The story of his healing soon spread. Within but a few years, thousands were crossing the Silver Bridge to visit the shrine, for a spring had begun to flow from the base of the stone, and its waters were said to be imbued with healing properties.
And I wonder how much the priests benefited from it all. And what? It could cure diseases, mend broken limbs?
So the church records say. This bathing chamber was constructed around the stone, and people across the land came to bathe in the sacred waters while they still flowed.
I have heard tales of a similar nature in the Far East. A young girl claimed to have seen a holy vision of a woman while bathing near the springs closest to her home. She described a woman conspicuously similar to the holy woman of a religious order of which her family was a member. Bathing houses were established there too, but for fear of diminishing the rate at which the owners of the bathhouses could admit pilgrims, the waters were only changed once a day. The dying and diseased came in droves, passing through that water in the hundreds every day, so I'm sure you can imagine what a horrible slop it was at the end. They were but pools of blood, sloughed off skin, scabs, bits of cloth and bandage, an abominable soup of malady. The only miracle
sounds like
was that anyone emerged alive.
sounds
Such
like
a miracle was infrequent at best.
what's it?
I cannot
Nurgle's
justify the
favorite
actions
place.
of the greedy or
Yeah.
the impure. I can
Well,
assure you that did not happen
I would say
here,
Nurgle's
if
swimming
that is
pool,
your
but-
concern.
Yeah.
And also, like,
Hematite from a banded ironstone formation, exposed by landslip during the storm, most likely. That would explain the strike. It seems to me that your holy man was not blinded by any physical defect, but was a result of hysteria or earlier mental trauma. It is not unheard of to be cured in such a manner.
Are you attempting to debunk the miracle this church was founded upon? It was our Creator's will. And if your explanation were to substitute mine, the nature of the event is still what I would call a miracle. The Creator's face was seen. His voice was heard. It is a malicious thing to seek to destroy another's faith, Apocalypsis.
I do not aim to be malicious. I am trying to explain how such a thing could have happened without the intervention of a godly power. You think that the way we perceive the world is the way it acts.
Okay. You got something to say?
Yeah, so there is kind of a slight flaw with this argument, and of course this is one of those faith things. It is that yes, you can explain how something physically happened, like a miracle to happen. That doesn't discount that a miracle didn't happen, or that it wasn't orchestrated by like a higher power, right? Like for example, that stone, like having that stone placed there and having the mechanics of the world set up in such a way that this weird interaction could happen would still require, in this hypothetical scenario, a creator to set up the world in such a way where this could happen.
Similar principle to Joseph Smith translating the Book of Mormon. There's really no way that he could have without some measure of divine intervention just based on the circumstances. So, yeah, you can kind of say that kind of their science explains God, but science doesn't necessarily preclude God. God could just be working through science.
Or vice versa.
Well, I don't know.
Agree?
Vice versa, no.
It's quite harder. It requires a lot more faith, in my opinion, for that to happen, because you have to have explanations, of multiple fields, multiple disciplines to explain, okay, why did humans create a god?
I was just thinking that, like, science working through God, I don't know how that really would work necessarily. So, yeah, let's keep going, shall we?
Actually is, but you cannot perceive the external world directly. Indeed, none of us can. Instead, we know only our ideas or interpretations of objects in the world. The human brain is a marvelous organ, priest, and it is especially adept at constructing images of faces and voices from limited information. Imagine your holy man sheltering from the storm in the cover of this great stone when the lightning bolt hit, the fire and the noise, the pounding surge of elemental energy. Isn't it possible that an already religious man might, in such circumstances, perceive sights and sounds of a divine nature? We do it all the time. When you wake with dread in the dead of night, is that darkness in the corner not an intruder instead of just a shadow? The creak of a floorboard, the tread of a murderer?
I agree. The human mind is a powerful thing. What I value most, however, is the ability to reflect upon the past and reach a conclusion that tap against my window was a natural occurrence, and not a murderer come to kill a lonely priest.
Given the origins and evolution of religions in the human species, it seems a far more convincing and likely explanation that it was a figment of happenstance and a creative mind. A holy man might make a miracle of simple good fortune because of a predisposition to believe in the supernatural. Don't you agree?
No, I do not.
Really? You strike me as an intelligent man. Why can you not concede at least to the possibility of such an explanation?
Because I too have seen my God and heard his voice. Nothing can compare with knowing personally and completely that the divine exist.
Ah, personal experience. The most valued kind.
This is very interesting. So do we want to? I know exactly. I saw. I think it's Luton.
Yes.
Talk about this story, so I know exactly what is going to happen with this. Shall I ruin the surprise, or does everybody know
Let
what it?
let it play out. Let's play it out.
Yeah, let's let it play out. But I know it's something that involved like there's an explanation for what happens in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, where did you receive this vision?
On a battlefield in the lands of the Frank, many, many years ago.
The Frank were brought into unity long ago. The last battle was fought nearly half a century ago. You must have been a young man back then.
I was young and foolish. Young and foolish.
Hardly a prime candidate for divine intervention. But then I've found that the least likely to receive it are often the most in need of it. I have read your holy book before. To me, most of the men who appear on the pages are far from ideal role models. Perhaps I should not be so surprised. The devilish rogue sits with me today.
It is interesting since, like, that is true. A lot of them are not ideal. Like, if you take a look at the Bible, like King David,
Yeah.
kind of sucks as a dad.
Oh yeah, and not to mention
no doubt about that.
What codex?
Like the Emperor is a terrible dad. Not gonna lie. The the whole thing.
Yes.
I was just saying, like, he has a point that most of the people in the Bible are not good people, like King David.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like even like the disciples of Jesus, like they abandoned him at his hour of need. Peter, who is like the foundation, who Catholics believe is like, who claimed him as their spiritual father, denied Jesus 3 times. And then not to like various people in the Old Testament had some various sins or does very dubious things. Dubious.
Yeah, the only one that I can think of that was pretty solidly just a good person was Samuel. Technically,
he was also not a good father.
Well,
his sons. Like
I think if you try. Well, I think that we have a case study to be made between Samuel and Eli.
Yeah.
Because Eli fell under condemnation from God for how he raised his sons, whereas Samuel did not.
It really depends if you think the result of his parenting is important to a person's character or not. There are actually also, you got Josiah. King Josiah was
a good king who was raised by a really evil dad.
Yeah. And then you got Enoch. And then Abel, who dies. Like, it's just like a handful at most. You could probably like come to get like 10, but out of like the hundreds that it's been described in the Bible and have focus on, very small list.
Yeah, like Solomon probably wasn't the best dad, considering his son is clearly psychotic.
He wasn't a good dad. He wasn't a good husband.
Wasn't a good king. Toward the end, was extremely materialistic. Spent at least twice as long on his own palace that he did on the temple. Bankrupted the nation. Or at the very least, like, worked a lot of his subjects really hard.
Yeah. But well, okay, so here's actually an interesting fact about that part. Essentially back then, there wasn't no currency as much to be used for taxation. So the common way back in those times to do taxation is, of course, give a portion of food, but also the most common form is actually mandatory work days, where you pay your taxes by doing work projects for the king. So that is why when the people were talking to Rehoboam saying, hey, could we have less work? They were essentially having a lighter load, aka could you lessen our time to be away from our families, or the conditions of working on these big work projects. And that's when you get Rehoboam being the dumbest political move you could think of. Of hey, you were having a worse
history.
Yes, it's one of the top 10, but it's the most common one. Saying
Fair enough. All right, fair.
Raising taxes, essentially. He raised the taxes harder.
Yeah. I think the quote was, "My father lashed you with whips. I will lash you with scorpions."
Which could be a different type of whip. Could be custom to the Count of Nine Tails, but still,
well, it's only a poison whip. I'll say that much.
Anyway,
Rehoboam was not a good person. He was a really bad king, and the guy Jeroboam, who was the guy up north, wasn't very good either.
He was probably worse.
Yeah, the kings of Israel were generally worse than the kings of Judah, by and large.
It was Game of Thrones. Yeah, it was
but in real
just
life.
Game of Thrones up there. Yeah, Game of Thrones in real life.
Yes.
The only dynasty that had lasted more than a generation was the Omri dynasty, where King Ahab had, and that was only 4.
And then they got overthrown by Jehu, who actually has a pretty badass story.
Yeah, he's got at least in the Bible, got the more favorable out of him, which is he's above, just because he was the avenging person who wiped out the Omri dynasty. He got a little bit more of a favorable light, but just barely. He wasn't a Judahite king, because at least if you look at the kings of Judah, there are some kings that's okay, we need to get rid of the idols. Time to clean up house.
Yeah, and you could say that in some cases the Josian reforms were actually the cause of the Sanhedrin later.
But that's a topic for another. It really depends.
Indeed.
So
your tone may be pleasant, but your spirit is nothing but adversarial. You say you wish to learn of me, and this church will come. Let us joust with words, thrusting and parrying one's certainties with argument and counter-argument.
Joust our words.
Say what you will, but come sunrise, you will leave and not return.
This is my intention. I have other matters to attend to, but tonight I have to talk with you. My adversarial spirit is not born from any mal-will towards you, Uriah. My malcontent is born from my love for humanity. I would see our species in an age of wonder, without these constant wars and the ignorance that blankets our kind like a plague. I would see us ascend. I would see all be raised to the status.
Doesn't age quite so well.
Yeah, I would agree. That's the Emperor of Mankind. Yeah, the Emperor of Mankind does not do that.
Like it's
No.
always funny when you read this. It's like, okay, this is what the Emperor wanted, and then you just look up 40k now, and even
Yeah.
then, like just the Horus Heresy in general, like the Great Crusade and stuff. So you want them to have no war. So why did you just go and start warring on that on Italy? I get it. Like there are reasons
But
back
to be
then because
fair,
the aliens back then were pretty bad.
Yeah, and to be fair, some, especially in the first Horus Heresy book, they were really pushing it, with Horus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you mean really
So-
pushing it?
Well,
Expansion angle.
that and also they killed his favorite son, Sejanus. They almost killed Malagast, and they proclaimed themselves as the Emperor, per se. Well, the ruler of the planet, really, but that's besides the point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, they're really pushing it. In some cases, there were necessities, of course, you had to do, but more often than not, Horus did try to avoid all-out war, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And this
But
before
it's
he turned
still-
traitor. I should clarify this.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
it's the
still-
first book of the Horus Heresy. You're assuming that it's either going to be about how Horus's falls, or like the build up to like you're putting in the first nail on the coffin of
Well,
Horus
ironically-
being a good person.
Ironically enough, the first book is literally called Horus Rising. Ironically enough. Irony.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Godhood that is worshipped throughout the galaxy, but we are enslaved to the fantastical notions that reside within that book of yours, and all the others like it. That damnable book in your hands is a curse, and I would see you rid of it.
You go so far as to mock my holy book too? This damnable book provides a code by which I have lived a peaceful life, in which I have built more than I have destroyed, helped more than hurt. My time before this book was nothing but destroying and hurting. Untold thousands more live similar lives thanks to the guidance provided by our willingness to believe in something greater than ourselves. Tell me, Apocalypsis, when we, as a species, find your vision to be a reality, what will become of us? What will unite us? Peace can only be attained through an aspiration or a common enemy. When that aspiration disappears and we as a species are gods without rivals, who will we turn on? We will turn on each other, friend Apocalypsis. Your vision will
Look at
bring
the
only
Eldar.
eternity to war. When gods clash, galaxies
Or the old
burn.
ones.
So what would you
Or the
have me say?
Necrontyr.
There are more faiths than yours, Uriah, and each faith has equally zealous defenders.
Mhm.
How many generations of conflict until your message of peace turns to a crusade against those who do not share your beliefs? Where there are differences, humanity will find them. And these differences are so fundamentally rooted in you as others' beliefs are in others. There can be no resolution without conflict.
You find nothing but exceptions to my arguments, never any rules by which to measure them.
How can I find rules in an inherently hypocritical system? Your book has been rewritten, translated, and twisted to fit the needs of hundreds of anonymous authors for hundreds of years. The faith
Ooh,
is
okay.
eternal, but the story and morals are not. One man hears his dead grandfather, and he is locked away in an asylum. But if he heard the voice of God, he would be venerated and might well become a saint.
A fair argument, so to speak.
I have issues with the whole translation things because most people don't understand the rigorousness when it comes to translating, like specifically like the Bible. But I'm pretty sure if you ask any people with their other religions, like they would probably say the same thing. Is like they are. It is a serious thing when you mistranslate something, and it's usually quickly corrected as soon as possible, or put like in the Bible, in most modern Bibles, there's a section in John of the story of Jesus where the Pharisee brings in an adulterous woman, and Jesus says, "Whoever sinned may cast the first stone." And they left because they all sinned, and Jesus basically forgave the woman and said, "Go and sin no more." There's a bracket because in the earliest versions we have of the Book of John text, it's not there.
Really?
But yeah, there are actually parts in the Bible of like a New Testament mostly that because we have so much of the early manuscript, like little bits and pieces and all over, like in various states. Some of the earliest texts does not have certain sections. So to cover that, it doesn't mean that there's like a divine, it's an important story and it fits well within the text, even though it could be a later insert. There are some ideas that that story is like a floating text. So some translation would put it on like another book. Others put it in John. So they just put it in a bracket, just basically saying, this is not in the original, like the oldest text that we have. I wouldn't say original oldest text. We don't have originals. We have oldest texts, like closer to the time when they are written that we could possibly find. Which is which compared to a lot of sorry.
I was interrupted. Go on.
Like compared to like even modern literary classics, with a few exceptions, we have more quote unquote OG copies, oldest copies of like biblical texts than like the Iliad and the Odyssey. Other than like you can only go older with like the Epic of Gilgamesh, like the stuff that they were writing in tablets and being baked. But in terms of like the time when humanity switched to paper, any paper form, we have a lot more textual evidence to work with the Bible compared to others, especially older ones. So,
okay.
How is this a logical and rational system?
It is my faith. Respect my beliefs as I respect yours, despite your constant slights against my life's dedication.
Did you not say we should joust? Why does your faith require such protection? Is it not robust enough to withstand my questioning? No one else on this world enjoys such protection from scrutiny. So why should you and your faith be singled out for special treatment?
Why is it that faith is being targeted for destruction? Perhaps there is enough truth behind my words that the Emperor, in all his wisdom, fears their holy power. Or is it because there are people too obstinate to accept that there may be something that science cannot quite explain? I have seen my God. I saw his face and heard his words in my soul.
Do not expect me or anyone else to give your experience credence, Uriah, despite what you think you saw. You may believe it to be real, but just because you believe something to be true does not make it so.
I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. That day on the fields of Frank has never lost its clarity. I relive it with every waking moment in which I am not occupied.
And where in Frank did this miraculous vision take place, priest?
On the killing field of Gadwere.
You were at Gadwere.
Aye. I was.
Will you tell me what happened?
I'll tell you what happened. But first, I need another drink.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that it's much more medieval
No,
aesthetic
Frank,
rather
this
than
is the good stuff.
Well,
I wouldn't deign to drink this from a tumbler.
well, these are the dying
Now
days
we'll
of old
drink from a
knights.
glass.
Well, old knight is basically just Mad Max, just more science
The
fiction.
water of life.
Finally, spirits both you and I can believe in.
Give it a minute. Let the vapors build. It intensifies the flavor. Swirl it a little. See the slicks on the side of the glass? They are called tears. And since they are long and descending slowly, we know the drink is strong and full-bodied.
And how long must we wait?
Patience, friend Apocalypsis. This wine has sat for many decades. It can sit for a few more minutes. Nose the drink. Feel the aromas and how they stimulate your senses. Allow yourself a moment. Let the scents awaken the memories of their origin.
May I ask a personal question while we wait?
Well, it depends on the question, doesn't it?
Why is it you carry a timepiece that doesn't function?
It is a family relic, you see. It has been with us since before even Old Night. No one knows when it broke, but as legend goes, it ticks before disaster strikes. I never believed it. Nor did my father. When I found it, however, it was a minute later than I always remembered it. Now it sits a minute from midnight. My father always jested that the day it struck midnight would be the beginning of the end. I've kept it for decades. Never once seen it budge. I check it often, as if it could warn me of danger. Maybe there is hope, eh?
A grim portent. You seem to surround yourself with grim beliefs, Uriah.
Perhaps. But let's not ruin this good wine with such dour thoughts. My story has not yet even begun. We've waited long enough. Drink, friend Apocalypsis, generously. Hang on to the taste before it is gone.
Ah, that's a flavor I have not had in a long time. I didn't think any remained.
It is an old bottle, one I rescued from the ruins of my parents' home.
You make a habit of keeping old alcohol around.
Aye, a throwback to my wild youth. I was fond of the drink, a little too much even, if you take my meaning.
I do. Many a great man has been brought low by such an addiction.
Yeah,
You
true.
said you wanted to know of Gadara?
Yeah.
If you are ready and willing to tell me of it,
Drink with
Yes.
moderation, people.
Willing,
Drink
yes.
with moderation.
Ready? Well, I suppose we will find out. Eh?
Gadwari was a bloody day. It was hard on all who were there. I understand.
I may be old, and my eyes may not be what they once were, but I can still tell that you are far too young to know of Gadwari. You would not have even been born when that battle was fought.
Trust me, I know of Gadwari.
I should tell you a little of myself first. Who I was back then, and how I came to find God on the battlefield of Gadwari. If you have half a mind to hear it, anyway.
What is a story without its context? Of course. Say what you feel needs to be said.
I was born in the town below this church, nearly 80 years ago. The youngest son of the local lord. My clan had come through the final years of Old Night with much of their wealth intact. And they owned all the lands around these parts, from this very mountain all the way to the mainland bridge. I wish I could say I was treated badly as a child, to give reason for why I turned out the way I did. I cannot. I was indulged and became something of a spoiled brat, given to drinking, carousing, and bouts of petulance. Looking back, I realized what little shit I was. But of course, it's a lot of them
Yeah.
to look at themselves in their youth and realize
Spoil
too late
brat.
all the mistakes they made. And
Well, he
what
was.
they carry. Anyway, I decided in the adolescent fires of rebellion that I was going to travel the world and see whatever free corners of it remained. In the wake
And yes,
of
that
the
is,
conquest.
to clarify, that is the original
So
symbol
much of the
before
world
the
had been
Perion
brought under
color.
its sway. But I was
Okay.
determined to find one last patch
Yeah.
of land that wasn't yet under the heel of his thunderbolt and lightning army.
It only became
Ulrich
the color
found
when the
like
Mechanicus
Emperor was a
joined.
tyrant. He ended the wars that were destroying the planet and defeated dozens of tyrants and despots. Without his armies, mankind would have descended into anarchy and destroyed itself within generations.
He still is a tyrant. Perhaps humanity would have been better off that way, rather than under the shadow of his accursed eagle. Maybe the universe
Yeah.
decided we'd had our chance, that our time was up.
Possibly.
Nonsense. The universe cares not a whit for our actions or us. Our fate is wrought by our hands and no others.
A philosophical
Ours.
point we will no doubt return to.
It's
I
the
was telling
royal
you,
R.
But of course, please continue.
Thank you. Well, after I announced my intention to travel the world, my father was good enough to grant me a generous stipend and a retinue of soldiers to protect me on my journeys. I left that very day and crossed the Silver Bridge 4 days later, traveling across a land recovering from war, which was growing
Yeah, I'll be right
fatter
back. Just give me a
than
second.
decreed by the Emperor.
Mhm.
Hammers beat up plates of armor. Blackened factories churned out weapons, and entire towns of seamstresses created new uniforms for his armies. I crossed to Europa and cruised my way across the continent, seeing the eagle-stamped banner everywhere I went. In every town and city, I saw people giving thanks to the Emperor and his mighty thunder giants. But I'll be damned if any of it was genuine. It was like they were going through the motions, because they knew it was dangerous not to. I'd seen the thunder giants as a child, but never in the wake of a conquest. Never quite seen the reality of them before that point. I was drunk and whoring my way down the Tully Peninsula when I came across a garrison of the Emperor's super soldiers at a ruined clifftop fortress. My damned romantic rebellious soul couldn't help but try and bait the giants. I called them many names: freak, slave, the minor demons of a greater devil. I even told them the Emperor's only goal was to enslave all of the human race to his own towering ego. After having seen them battle in the fields of Frank, I shuddered to think of the fear I was in then. I thought I was being clever. In my own stupor, I convinced myself I was a hero. Looking back, I would never even have passed as a martyr. Eventually, one of the giants broke rank and approached me.
Yeah, done. Meet the Thunder Warriors.
I felt invincible as only a
Yeah,
drunk and
they're
a
the
fool could.
prototypes.
This warrior was huge, far larger than
Yes.
any human I'd ever seen.
Yeah, they're the
His
space
entire
one
body
that
was
eventually
encased in
the
heavy, powered armor
Emperor got
that
rid of.
enclosed his chest and arms.
Thanks to the
Yeah.
with the help of the Dark Angels.
It occurred to me that when that giant came over to me and lifted me up, tearing my shirt and upsetting me greatly, I kicked at his armor and beat my fists into bloody pulps against his chest. But he just laughed at me. I screamed at him to let me go, and he did just that, telling me to shut my mouth before tossing me off the cliff and into the sea. By the time I'd climbed the great steps back up into the village, they were gone, and I was left with just myself and a hatred greater than I had ever known. Stupid, really. I was asking for it, and it was only a matter of time until someone put me in my place.
And after Tali,
Here and there, I've forgotten a lot of those years, truth be told. I was drunk most of my waking hours. I know I took a sand skimmer across the Mediterranean wastes and traversed the wastelands of the North African conclaves that Shankal reduced to an arid desert. All I found were settlements that were busy paying homage to the Emperor. So I carried onwards, far into the east, to see the ruins of Ursh and the fallen bastions of Nathum Doom. Even there, however, in places so far away as to be the most desolate and remote corners of the world, I still found those who gave thanks to the Emperor and his gene-engineered warriors. I couldn't understand it. Didn't these people know they just exchanged one tyrant for another? But then again, it wasn't their choice.
Humanity was on the brink of extinction. I cannot convey this point any more clearly. Without unity, and without the Emperor, there would be no human race. I cannot believe that you do not see that.
Oh, I see it all right. I see that very clearly. The devilish rogue did not, however. I was young and full of the fires of youth that see any form of control as oppression. Though they don't
Yeah,
appreciate
that's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
describes someone we know very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then some of the, then like, it's kind of funny with youth is like, especially it's like, yes, we don't like oppression or stuff, but then when you're kind of, because they don't know about stuff, like when you're trying to go into more specifics, it's all general stuff because they think, because sometimes like in Western, or it's kind of very common is like in humanity is you think you can fix a problem by kind of making a new system,
Which you can't most of the time.
which you're just switching out broken systems where like the real solution is more about more people of like learning to be moral. It's like that's why there's like a culture war, because that's the ultimate question of what values do we hold to make better people nowadays. And I think we kind of sometimes get lost track in that of like what's the goal.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
of the previous generation.
Indeed.
To poke and prod and establish their own rules. I was no different from any other youth. Well, perhaps a little.
So you'd traveled the world and hadn't found any corner of it that hadn't sworn allegiance to the Emperor. Where did you go next?
I returned home for a spell, bearing gifts I'd mostly stolen, and then set off again. But this time I went out as a soldier of fortune instead of a tourist. I'd heard rumors of unrest in the land of the Frank, and fancied myself a renowned war hero. The Frank were a fractious people, even before the days of unity. They were never ones to bow to invaders, even the ones who posed as benign. Once I reached the continent, I had heard of Havelet de Grasse and the Battle of Avalroy, and rode straight for the town.
Avalroy, a town poisoned by the bitterness of a madman whose meager skill fell far short of his ambition.
Now that much is obvious. Back then, the story was that Havelet was found wrongly accused of the brutal murder of the woman the Emperor appointed as governor. He was set to be shot by a firing squad when his brothers and friends attacked the local army units running the execution. The soldiers were torn to shreds, and the death of a few locals in the fighting turned a small-scale riot into open rebellion. It got ugly faster than the town had time to think what they were doing, but by then, it was too late. Unfortunately for everyone, Havelet was a gifted orator, and fanned the flames of the townfolk's ire at the Emperor's rule. Within the hour, a hastily formed militia had stormed the local army headquarters and seized the weapons within. None of the soldiers survived.
You are aware that Havelet did assault and murder the woman.
I learned that later, yes. By then it was far too late to do anything about it. By the time I reached Avalroy, full of piss and vinegar for the coming fight, Havelet had rallied a number of the local townships to his cause and amassed quite an army. It was magnificent, friend Apocalypsis, for it had been everything I had so desperately searched for. Icons of the Emperor being torn down, colorful buntings hanging from every window, bands playing in the streets constantly while Havelet and all of us, his soldiers, marched up and down the town. I swear it felt like we were an army of devilish, daring youths. We should have been training. We should have prepared. But our courage was buoyed up by the festivities, and more towns rose up against the Emperor's rule by the day. Within the week, We had amassed an army of nearly 40,000 strong. Truly, it seemed, I had found my glorious rebellion I had so desperately craved. It was heroic and courageous and dangerous, and it spoke to my romanticism for the heroic freedom fighters of old. We were absolutely sure that we would be the spark that would light the fires of rebellion all across the world and see the autocrat tumble from his self.
I guess we know where Ryan Johnson stole that sentiment from for the...
Indeed.
Yeah. May that man be screwed with a cactus for decades. Thankfully, he's caught up in doing terrible murder mysteries. I'm just like, cool. He's never going to direct another Star Wars movie. They're never going to risk it. It's never going to happen.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yep.
Imposed rule. Then we heard that the Thunderbolt and Lightning armies were marching from the east, and we set off in grand procession, making all due haste. Havelek leading us from Averroy was a joyous day. I'll never forget it. The laughter, the kisses from the girls, and the spirit of our shared brotherhood carried us off as we marched to battle. In but a week of marching, we reached Gadwere and set up our defenses atop a line of hills directly in the path of our enemies. We had all thought ourselves tactical geniuses, holding a strategically advantageous position. Had we any training and discipline, it might have made a difference. We held the high ground, and both of our flanks were
I had the
strong
high ground.
positions. On the left were the ruins of the Gadwere
Well,
bastion. On the right, the
You
desolate
do something
marshes to which nothing
incredibly
belongs.
naive. Even more
You
so than
must
Anakin
have
did.
known it was madness. To engage the Emperor's armies? I mean, you had no hope of defeating them. His warriors were bred for battle and spent every waking moment in combat training.
Perhaps we knew. Maybe we didn't want to think about it. We were so full of hope, of optimism, we wouldn't allow ourselves to even consider defeat. When the Emperor's armies came into sight, we were nearly 50,000 strong, and we faced an army estimated at a mere 5,000. It was hard not to feel that we could win the day, especially with Havelek riding up and down and firing our blood. His brother tried to calm him, but it was far too late.
The problem is you're
Eventually,
fighting
maybe a
super
kilometer from our
soldiers.
position, the Giants halted their advance.
Yeah.
We should have waited too. Instead of letting the spirit of the moment die, we charged down the hillside like mad, glorious fools, screaming war cries and waving swords, pistols,
Yes,
and rifles
you
over our
should have
heads.
waited.
It was maybe 6 or 7 ranks deep. We only covered half the distance before the Giants shouldered their weapons and opened fire. By
Yeah.
God, the noise. I'll never forget it. The first
That's a
volley
bolt
of
gun
thunder
for ya.
ripped down the line, and our first 5 ranks were cut down to a man before we could even scream. Each of their bullets was a small bomb that ripped limbs from bodies and burst men open from the inside like wet sacks. I turned to shout, and was struck in the back of the head and fell forward into the ruptured body of another man. Rolling over, I felt the back of my head and realized I had been hit. Shrapnel or some fragment, I figured. I could feel myself losing blood, weakening by the moment. Now the initial shock of the first few seconds had passed. The screaming began. The charge had ground to a halt, and now the men and women were milling around in confusion and fear. As the reality finally
50,000
dawned on them,
people.
and they understood the magnitude of
mind.
what Havelek had done. Now, the Thunder Warriors took their turn to charge. They broke into a run, and terror trembled beneath their feet. Most of those who had fallen but survived the volley were crushed beneath a giant metal boot. They all were unsheathing their swords with serrated edges and motorized blades. I'll never forget the sound of it all. The roar out of a nightmare it was. We had been defeated in the opening volley, but these warriors were without mercy. Havelek had somehow survived the initial barrage with only superficial wounds. And as I lay on my back, dying, I watched him stare, dumbfounded, as the leading thunder warrior cleaved him in two with a single swing of his chain blade. Looking back at Havelet's army, I saw my terror mirrored on the face of every man and woman left, who were all begging for mercy, throwing down their weapons, trying to surrender, but the slaughter continued, heedless of their powers. They marched right
All
up
right,
to
you got back
without mercy.
from a
All
bathroom
those
trip.
people
Oh
cut
boy,
apart so quickly,
massacres!
brutalized
Yep.
such economy of force,
Yep.
I couldn't believe
This is
so
the
many
difference
people
between a
died
Thunder
in so
Warrior and a
short a time.
Starties. They're a bit more disciplined.
Thunder Warriors seem like they're more
Mechanized
animal.
butchery.
They are.
If I could have ran, I would have. And I'm not ashamed to say I lay there weeping, listening to the awful sound of people dying, and the wet sound of flesh being shorn from bodies, and the stench of voided bowels and open bellies, until the mercy of darkness overcame me. When I woke, surprised I'd still lived, it was dark. In the distance, I heard the victory chants of the Thunder Warriors drifting across the fields.
Yay! We killed the enemy, all of them,
Havelet's army
not
had
just
been
the men,
Different
but the
minds.
women and
destroyed.
children
Put
too.
to flight, destroyed. In less than an hour, 50,000 men and women had been killed.
Keep this in mind.
I
That's
never
before the
learned of any
World
other
Eaters happened.
survivors. Weak and laying in a field of human parts, I began to
Man,
Mm.
man, why didn't the Emperor got rid of the World Eaters as soon as he found out? Oh, they're basically Thunder Warriors 2.0.
Well,
Heart ruin I'd visited.
they weren't
upon
originally, but
precious pursuit of
but
hedonism
yeah.
and self-interest. I wept for my family,
Should have been nice to horror. Should have been nice to anger on Emperor.
and that was when I realized I wasn't alone.
Who was with you?
The power of the divine. I opened my eyes and saw a golden face above me, a face of such radiance and perfection that my tears were no longer shed for my self-pity, but for his beauty. Light radiated from the figure, and I averted my eyes for fear I'd be blinded. I had been in pain, yes, but now that pain was gone, and I knew I was seeing the face of the divine. I could not describe that face to you, not with all the poetic imagery in the world at my disposal, but it was the most exquisite thing I had ever seen. I felt myself lifted up and thought this was the end. And then the face spoke, and I knew I was destined to live.
What did this face say to you?
Why do you deny me? Accept me, and you will know that I am the only truth and the only way.
Did you reply?
I couldn't. To utter any words would have been base. In any case, my tongue was quite stilled by the awesome vision of God.
What made you think it was God? You were a dying man on a battlefield, surrounded by the dead comrades
Okay,
you were
Emperor.
having
Well,
an
well,
affair.
well.
We have a pun.
Well,
Look, Emperor. Sorry, I know it's like, oh yes, there's an explanation for everything. You just choose to present yourself as a god. I'm sorry. Your ego is. You choose to wear gold, chocolate, put on a light show.
Yeah.
I mean, go guitar,
Yeah.
to be fair.
Like your drip is awesome and stuff, but come on, you can't have one sympathy. Like, look, I love putting gold on stuff. Okay, like gold is like an awesome color to mess with.
Yeah.
But still,
Also, the Emperor's lightning claw is the coolest of all the lightning claws.
yeah. Most of the lightning claws are like are just like I just find them mostly derpy because they're kind of like discount Wolverine toys, Wolverine claw toys.
I was thinking Lady Deathstrike.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, but like, come on, Emperor. That's one of the fun things about the Emperor. He just has no self-awareness at all.
Yeah.
No. Well, to be fair, he's like a billion souls into one, essentially.
And clearly not the ones where they brain.
Well, to be fair, they were shamans after all, so I mean, what shroom? They were probably on shrooms at that point, to be fair.
Yeah.
Think back. Surely
Nice
there
little
is
exaggeration.
another explanation.
I need no other explanation. You may be wise in many things, Apocalypsis, but you cannot know what goes on in my own mind.
Apocalypses.
I heard the voice of God and saw his face. Does the perception of events truly matter if the results are singular? I was borne up and set into a deep slumber. When I awoke, my wounds were healed. A piece of bone had been embedded in my skull, nearly a centimeter away from severing my spinal cord. When I rose, I searched for fellow survivors. I was alone. I decided to return to the land of my birth, but when I returned, I found my family home in ruins. The townsfolk told me Scandian raiders from the north had come to plunder my family's wealth. So they killed my brother and tortured my parents and sisters in an attempt to make my father give up the family treasures. My father had a weak heart and died before they could learn his secrets. I found my home in ruins and my family as bleached cadavers. There were no amends to be made at home. All I had to remember them by was their wealth, good wine, and this damned watch.
I am sorrowed by your loss, Uriah. If it is any consolation, the Scandians would not accept unity and were wiped out near 3 decades ago.
I know, but I do not revel in death anymore. The men who killed my family will have been judged by God, and that is justice enough for me.
It is noble of you.
I took those few keepsakes from the ruins and made my way to the
Hi,
minister,
I'm Slanesh.
thinking I'd get blind drunk and try to figure out what to do with my life. Halfway there, I met an old priest in need of help, in desperate search of the next caretaker of the Folga Lapis. I knew I had found my purpose. I had spent my entire life until then living for myself, but when I saw the spire of that church, I knew that God had a purpose for me. I should have died at Gaduere, but I was saved for a reason.
And what was the reason?
To serve God, to bring his words to the people, to do good where others would not, to be a beacon in the coming dark.
And that's what you've been doing here?
That is what I've been trying to do, but the Emperor's promulgators traverse the globe with his message of denouncing the supernatural and criminalizing the devout. I assume that is why you are here, and why none of my congregation have come here tonight.
You would be correct. In a manner of speaking, I have come to try and convince you of the error of your ways, to learn of you and to show you that there is no need for any divine powers to guide humanity. This is the last church on Terra, and it falls to me to offer you this chance to embrace the new way willingly.
Or
There is no or, my dear priest. Come, let us go back out into the church as we talk. I want to teach you of all that belief in gods has done for humanity down the ages. The bloodshed,
I do have to
the
say
Oh
that
no!
persecution. I will tell you of this, and you will see how damaging such belief is.
Oh no! Are we really entering the Reddit post?
Apocalypse.
We're entering
Yeah.
the
It is
Reddit
my
post.
sincerest hope.
So what do you mean exactly by the Reddit post exactly? Let's kind of clarify things.
Yes.
It's okay. So it's just a joke. It's just more. Oh, okay. Here's what. You know how Reddit atheists. Like,
I'm more familiar with anti-Mormon atheists than with general atheists.
Like the anti-theist
Mhm.
spiel about, oh, this is how you're God. So,
Mhm.
I'm just expecting it now at this point.
Mhm.
It's mostly just a joke.
Mhm.
You'll go on your way, friend Apocalypsis.
It is my sincerest hope that we will go together. You know of gene breeding?
Aye, very little is not gene-bred these days.
And you have heard of the once great city of Zoser in the Nordafric conclaves?
Yes, I've been to Zoza. At least I saw what my guide told me were its ruins.
True. Not much is left. Anyway, the scientists of Zoser sought to end a great famine that was sweeping the Nordafric conclaves through gene-breeding animals that would grow more quickly and more easily in their harsh climate. When one of the local cults caught wind of the gene breeding, they saw it as an affront to their god. They were very
Be right
much
back.
against the modification of genetics because they thought that their god had designed them as they were, and it was a sin to meddle in such things. This cult, the Zozerites, saw the lead scientist, an Apashtar, as the next embodiment of evil, seeking to defile all the people by feeding them the embodiment of sin. They went on a rampage, stabbing and clubbing any Apashtar they could find. Of course, the Apashtar retaliated, and rioting spread throughout the city and left close to 1,000 people dead. They did not again try to gene breed new farm stock, and untold thousands more died to the famine.
Is there a point to that story?
Absolutely. It typifies religion and tells a universal tale of religious behavior that has been reoccurring since the beginning of human history. Religion actively impedes
That's
forward
also
progress by producing stubborn people
you can replace
who
it with
fear
anything.
advancement.
I think the problem is more bigotry and ignorance than religion.
Yeah, or just like or it's just like any like dogmatism.
Mhm.
It's
Which
like
the Emperor kind of fails to prevent because that's what his empire turns into.
yeah, like his empire it becomes very
Pretty
dogmatic. Like even like in the middle of the Horus Heresy, it was starting like over time with the Great Crusade, it was becoming more and more dogmatic.
A far-fetched
I would say
example,
it's more
friend
case by case,
Apocalypsis.
but yes.
One freakish story cannot serve as proof of theory that all belief in the divine is a bad thing. Why don't you tell the story of the time a church organized a program to help the poor and the sick and the dying? Why do you not tell a story of when faith and religion gave a community the strength to stick together and help each other through Old Night? Through faith comes character, and through our character there is moral strength. Without such guidance, the world would descend into anarchy.
A secular government with strict laws and programs could accomplish all that you have listed without creating stubbornness or creating a dependability on a church that would impose further taxes upon the poor and make waste of otherwise.
Mr. Emperor, you're kind of wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
against the government. Yeah. Okay, Karl Marx. Yeah, theoretically it could work. Theoretically.
If all the people are honest and don't money grub, which is kind of impossible because most communist governments don't breed innovation. Quite the opposite,
Yeah.
because nobody's incentivized to excel.
In fact, they do. In fact, they are incentivized to cut corners to make quotas.
Yeah.
It's all about the quotas.
Chernobyl, anybody?
I will say this, Crimson Scorio. Scorpio, Crimson Scorpio. Early on, it was a lot more. It was a lot better, but
Yes.
I think we're entering the weakest part in the argumentation.
Yeah, I think it's because
The whole story, I would
Emperor-
argue.
Yeah,
It's productive time.
Yeah.
The idea that the church is a moral compass just isn't true. Where the church is strong, it causes cruelty. Intense belief produces intense hostility. Only when faith loses its force can a society hope to become humane and progress.
I don't believe that. My holy book gives instructions on how to live a good life. It has lessons humanity needs. I have benefited greatly, as have the people in the town below.
Are you sure? I have read your holy book, and much of it is bloody and vengeful. I suspect an outside spectator would view the people on those pages not as exemplars of proper behavior, but terrifying examples of corrupt morals.
You are missing the point, Apocalypsis. Much of the text is not meant to be taken literally. It is symbolic or allegorical.
Pause it.
That is
Yeah. So I would say one of the weaknesses right now is that
Yes.
where we don't have examples right now. Like
yeah,
usually
even-
at this point, like if you had like a normal conversation, we would start bringing out verses of where like where the person who's skeptical will bring out, well, Jesus cursing the tree and it died. That happens in one of the Gospels where it's like Jesus couldn't get figs, he cursed a tree, he died, but then you have to explain, well, in the context, it was right before him going through the temple visit. A temple visit, and it dying was after the temple visit. So it serves as like a bookend in the narrative of the
It's
Gospel,
also-
for example.
It's also representative of the Pharisees
Right.
and the whited sepulchres that only have bones on the outside. It's the tree itself is as a object lesson because it's the time that should be producing figs and fruit, but it's not producing any kind of growth really, and so he's using it as an object lesson.
Right. And that's like the example. So, but right now we're just it's so vague because they
Yeah.
don't I'm pretty sure it's like they didn't want to make an actual religion because they didn't want to actually offend anyone.
Yeah.
I think this story
They-
would have been a bit more powerful when you could like do the Catholics, because in terms of Christianity, the Catholics are easy to do religious topics on. Mostly because it's so commonplace is that there has been both positive and negative portrayals in media that you could easily have done that.
There's also the element of the Catholic Church is the oldest Christian religion and technically the oldest existing religion on the planet currently.
Yes.
Largest and oldest. Since you still have like
Yes.
pockets of Zoroastrianism, but I would imagine that it is very different than how it was practiced during its original heyday.
Exactly my point. You priests pick and choose which bits of your book to take literally and which to read as symbolic. And that is a personal matter, not a divine one.
That's
You
why
may
we
be
have
pure
scholars.
and noble, Uriah, but all too often, a priest is a man who is cruel and purely seeking personal gain. Religion has no place in a fair and just society. In ages past, a frightening number of people took these holy books absolutely literally, sowing untold misery and death because they truly believed the words they read. The history of religion is a horror story, Uriah. And if you doubt it, look to the past and see what humanity has done in the name of their gods over the millennia. In ancient times, ritual sacrifices were commonplace. To appease their vile gods, priests drowned women and children in sacred wells and cut the heart out of their slaves and prisoners. They would drive a pile through a maiden's body to pacify a non-existent creature.
You cannot seriously compare my religion to such barbarism. You describe ignorant savagery, not religion as I would name it.
Can't I? It was never uncommon for religions founded in this region of the world to use their faith to justify conquest without mercy. The rich desired more power, but the peasantry would not fight for their kings and their lords just to further the interest of those who ruled them so cruelly. The lords knew this. They guised their political objectives with religious significance.
Okay. Yes, they would actually. Because there's multiple ways than just using religion, like money. Like if you make a system where you that's how for example Rome expanded so much is that
they're just like they get money.
Yeah, you get money, you get land. Like if you so you can get more powerful. It becomes like an endeavor for enriching yourself. So it really depends on the system. And then when you're talking about the conquistadors and like the Crusades, if you want to, it's like the Crusades is like a mix of religious. Like there is definitely a religious angle because you're trying to. It was a war between protecting Christendom from the Muslims, while also trying to prevent what's going on in Europe, where knights are killing each other.
Also, the Aztecs had it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have sympathy for the Aztecs. That was a society that needed to die. Admittedly, the conquistadores should not have destroyed their records because that could have been very useful, but their society as a whole was really awful. That was a lot of human sacrifice.
Well, yeah, and also it was so awful is that the only reason why you had the conquistador had the success that they had allies. All the local tribes around the Aztecs is like, want to take them out? Sure, I want in.
Yeah,
they literally sold it. They made a deal with the preferable devil to take out their bigger oppressor.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very much I think it was the Tlaxcala, where the people that the Aztecs were up against.
Yeah.
And the Tlaxcala hated the Aztecs and were willing to side with the white dudes to take the Aztecs down.
Also, not just any European nations, the worst ones the Spanish were the worst people to become the first new world trading empire because they reunited. They built their nations off of wars against the Muslims.
Yeah. Yeah, the Reconquista was a pretty big long-running war against the Islamic people.
Just and marvelous judgment of God, and the people fought fervently for a cause with no merit. Extremism bred extremism, and the retaliation was swift. Now that war had been initiated on religious pretexts, the conflicts escalated, and the battling continued, until little was left but fields littered with the bones of the foolish and the deceived. But sorrow or remorse was never tolerated for such a thing, as the crusade was God's will, after all.
This is ancient history. As you say, the nobles were bent on furthering their own interests. They used religion as an excuse, but in their greed, they would have committed these atrocities one way or another. You cannot vouchsafe the truth of events so lost in the mists of time.
I would agree with you, had they not repeated the act nearly a century later. Warriors laid siege to the sect stronghold in ancient France, and when the city fell, the generals asked their leader how they might tell the faithful from the traitors among the captives.
Oh,
The leader, who followed his god, ordered the warriors to kill them all. God will know his own.
okay.
20,000 men, women,
There's
and
some
children.
context. It was a special. I think it was part of the Albaginian Crusade, and where they were dealing with a special kind of heretic.
Yeah,
And even and if I, what?
the Waldensians, right?
Yeah, it was a heresy in southern France,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure the general did get some flack for that. Because, you know, you're still you're murdering both faithful and the heretics. You're only supposed to persecute the heretics, not the faithful.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a good look.
No, it wasn't.
Children were lost to faith that day. Of course, for fear that any may escape, an organization was given absolute power over the people, with its sole purpose to hunt down those who ran. They brought about hysteria and tortured any they so pleased.
The
They did not
Inquisition.
stop once all their enemies were hunted down and killed either.
Yep.
They too had convinced themselves of their holiness. They exterminated whole towns on the merest suspicion of witchcraft or treachery.
And you are doing the same
When it was all
thing?
said and done,
Yeah.
100,000 were dead. Most of them were innocent.
If
And
you allow
also-
me, I shall
and
turn your
also-
logic back upon you, Apocalypsis.
Oh.
Had it been a secular government that decided they required more land and riches, do you truly believe they would have decided against it for no reason other than that there was no divine justification? Look back upon your great knowledge of history. Do you truly not recall any
I
secular
did
government
my,
that drove itself mad
senior
with
thesis
suspicion of
on
treachery
the
and created a state ruled by surveillance and torture?
on the
You troubled
Albigensian
part of history.
heresy.
Take what you so desire and insist I behold the bloody remains. Humans are flawed, and religion is more often a convenient scapegoat than a corrupting force.
If you believe that, then you have been shut away in this church for far too long, priest. All the dictators deposed through unification were mass-murdering ethnarchs who killed millions in their constant warring, burning away all hope of progress. Cardinal Tang's pogroms and death camps saw millions dead in the Indonesia bloc. He died but 30 years ago and claimed his entire life had been served in the name of a greater power.
You fixate on the blood and death and forget all the good that can be achieved through faith.
Uriah, you only see religion for what it can be. I am seeing it for what it most always is. Savagery pervades our world, and it is sustained by ignorance and crude belief. It is true that before the descent of Old Night, religion had lost its power over the people. But like the worst kind of poison, it lingered and fostered division amongst those who endured. Without belief, divisions blur over generations. New generations mingle, intermarry, and forget ancient wounds. It is only belief in gods and divine entities that keep them alien to one another. And anything that divides people breeds inhumanity and cruelty. Religion is the canker in mankind's heart that serves such an ugly purpose.
I have heard all that you have had to say, friend Apocalypsis, and I have finally heard enough. Yes, people have done terrible things to one another in the name of their gods, but they have done terrible things regardless of the course of their beliefs. An acceptance of gods and an afterlife is a vital part of what makes us who we are. If you take that away from humanity, what do you suggest takes its place? In my many years as a priest, I have ministered to many dying people, and the emotional benefit of religion's power to console the wounded and the dying, as well as those left behind, cannot be underestimated.
There is a flaw in your logic, priest. Religion's power to console gives it no credence or validity. It might be a comfort to a dying man to believe that he will go to some bountiful paradise of endless joy. But even if he dies with a wonderful smile on his face, it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. Better that less would die due to the removal of religion than each zealot die with a smile on their face.
Maybe, but when my time comes, I will die with God's name on my lips.
Are you afraid to die, Uriah?
No.
Truly?
Truly. I have my share of sins, but I've spent the greater part of my life in the service of my God, and I believe I have served him faithfully.
So why is it that when you go to these people who are dying and clinging to their beliefs that they don't welcome the end of their life? Surely the gathered family and friends should be of good cheer and celebrate their relatives' passing. After all, if eternal paradise awaits us, why are they not filled with gleeful anticipation? Could it be that in their heart of hearts, they don't really believe it?
Are you ever excited to have a loved one move on or leave in search of something greater?
All right.
Are you ever excited
One
to
problem.
leave your family? And
Here, there are people who are look forward. There are people who who dive with a smile and happy. Like there's a lot of people who are not afraid of dying because of a higher purpose. And it's much like what happens when you have Space Marines. What happens with the Space Marines in 40k? Like they get to a point. It takes a while that they are like are not afraid of dying. Usually those people have like a good long life.
and friends in search of a better life, even if it is for the best. Are you delighted to leave all that you know to be thrust into the unknown? No one is. Life is a gift, and our chance to make ourselves into someone before our time in the afterlife. Who would give that up willingly? If you cannot see that plainly, then you are a fool.
The biggest fool that has ever fooled before.
The Lord of mankind is the light in the way, and all his actions are for the benefit of mankind, which is his people. So it is taught in the holy words of our order, and above all,
There is no one to hear you.
I don't care what you say anymore. You have come here to do what you feel you need to do, and I'll not buttress your ego and self-righteousness by playing along any longer. You listen to my words, but hear nothing. End the charade.
As you wish. No more games.
I'm shocked. Shocked.
Oh, no more games.
You.
Now do you understand the futility of what you do here?
You are the Emperor.
I am. It is time to go.
Go? Go where? There is nowhere else for me in this godless world of yours.
Of course there is. Embrace the new way and be part of something incredible. A world and a time where we stand on the brink of achieving everything we ever dreamed. Verona's work was never meant for darkness. Only in the light can it achieve its full potential. Humanity is the same. And only when the suffocating shadows of a religion that teaches us not to question is gone from this world, will we see its true, radiating brilliance.
I will miss this place.
In time, I will build an Imperium of such grandeur and magnificence that this will seem like a pauper's hovel. Now, let us be on our way.
Them some powerful flamethrowers.
How can you
Yep.
do this? You say you stand for reason and the advancement of understanding, but here you are destroying a repository of knowledge.
Some things are best forgotten.
I hope you have foreseen the consequences of a world bereft of religion.
I have. It is my dream. An Imperium of man that exists without recourse to God. The United Galaxy with tech.
Yeah, you failed miserably. Sorry, bub.
Yeah, you.
The irony.
Yeah, the irony is palpable.
Yes.
All right. Let's finish this up.
At its heart.
Yep.
A united galaxy?
Indeed. Soon enough, unity will be achieved on Terra. It is time to reclaim humanity's lost empire among the stars.
With you at its head.
That is true, to be fair. It was.
Of course.
There's
Nothing of such grand scale can be achieved
it was
without a
Federation
singular
at the time.
vision at its heart.
called Old Knight.
Least of all, the
Yeah,
reconquest
but-
of the galaxy. There is a place for you at my side, Uriah. You are noble and your heart is true. We have need of iterators who would spread my imperial truth across the stars to all those planets without guidance.
I can submit to no imperial truth. My entire life has been altered by, at best, a misunderstanding. At worst, my life has been spent following a lie. But you know what? It doesn't matter that my life has been one massive falsehood. I came here with my heart open and emptied by grief. The spirit of my God had entered my soul and filled me with love. My devotion was my salvation, and I have spread a doctrine of love and forgiveness. No amount of words and tricks may change that. Even now, despite this revelation, my heart is filled with love. There is no resentment in my heart. What makes faith so powerful, Emperor, is that it requires no proof. Belief is enough.
I feared such a thing. I wish you would join my great crusade, Uriah. Soon I shall expand my Imperium to the furthest corners of the galaxy. With all my sons beside me, I need men like you. You make a virtue of commitment and purity.
Did you not just speak to me of the horror of the Crusades? And what evil men do in the name of purity? You are no better than the holy men you were telling me about.
The difference is that I know I am right, Uriah.
Spoken like a true autocrat.
You misunderstand.
Like all
me.
tyrants do.
I have seen the narrow path that humanity must walk to survive. This is how we must begin.
It is a dangerous road you travel. To deny humanity a thing will only make them crave it more. I see no reality in which your goals do not lead us to disaster and ruin. Beware your subjects do not begin to see you as a god. I truly hope, in the name of all that is divine, you are right. But I dread the future you forge.
I wish only the best for my people.
I believe you apocalypse. But I cannot be a part of it.
Now that'd be chat.
Okay, I'm getting the emotions hit. Oh,
Yeah.
What?
the emotions are hitting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually like a really good ending.
Yeah. It's improved.
Oh, come on. I wanted more of a collapsed building.
Well, this is a fan film.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. All right, I need to kill you too now.
And there we go.
All right. I would say it had a strong first part was great, was very good, and then we go into the priest backstory. Honestly, yeah, the Emperor section is the weakest part
Mm-hmm.
in terms of arguments in some characterization. But then when he fully revealed himself, it was good, and then that ending was very good.
Indeed. And to you then?
I still think what was that stop motion or kind of animated film
Oh, Hell's Reach?
that we watched? Yeah, Hell's Reach. I like that one just a little bit better, but this was impressive as a theological versus atheistic discussion. I think it's actually pretty indicative of a lot of the stuff that, say, Sam Harris does versus someone like Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
So I would say that this is a very realistic take on the theology versus atheism debate that often takes place and is actually fairly balanced.
Yeah, I would say in terms of representing both sides, it does a pretty good job. It's a very well done. I'm not sure about the author's faith in all of this. I'm assuming he's like just a secularist. So like in terms of like a secularist tackling this subject, it's like well presented.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
And it does, in terms of the way the Emperor is portrayed, I would have liked if the Horus Heresy was built off of this Emperor.
Well, that's what happens when you don't have notes. Well, when you share your notes, or cabinet notes. No, I mean, not like Ryan Johnson levels, but slightly close to that.
It just feels like when it comes to, it's like they are given like an outline of like, okay, here are the plot points, and here's what you're in charge of, this plot point, and then hey, we need to do characterization. Make it consistent. There was no like overarching editor.
Yeah.
Super. Well, one problem is that they're not going to get into actual biblical discussion.
Right.
No, that
And
yes, because by the end of the day, it is still, relatively speaking, a science fantasy universe. Essentially, it can be inspired by this, of course, but
Like,
I think that's
and
why
like
science fiction.
Yeah.
So go on.
I was just. It's like it's the weakness of when you don't have a real
specific.
religion. Yeah, when you don't have like a real religion to bounce off of, when you have to do a make-up religion, like because most of the time the make-up religion is not like
It's a facsimile.
Yeah. I would disagree with that. I think you do need to be specific. You need specifics to go with rigor. Otherwise, you're just going to make a blander, like 2D sides.
I mean, we all know what
It's
a
like,
one-dimensional side looks like.
Yeah, one-dimensional. I mean, yeah. It's like it's like when you're trying to write, for example, if you want to write a philosophical debate between Catholics and Protestants, but you can't use the Catholic and Protestants actual books, their actual theology, just like the pop culture versions of them, but make them fictional. You're not really going to get a very rigorous and very in-depth debate. You're just gonna, it's gonna be more surface level.
So, anything else?
I have no other real thoughts. How about you, Dan?
I think I'm pretty much good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Short and sweet.
Indeed.
Alrighty. Well, let's call it good for today. Adios.
Adios.
Bye.
Well, we'll talk about it some other time, maybe.
Of course, yeah.
All right.
You take care, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Enough! Kill me! Just end it. No.